Welcome to Victoria Rumble Room, an island show that stretches across the World Wide Web to try to bring stories that are regional, provincial, national, international, you name it, we try to get it. I'm Robin Adair, and across town, my partner in crime, who also weaves a web around things like news and views, is John Jurisic, the Croatian sensation. And John, the big piece of news, the big thing we'll be talking about today, the royal coronation.
That is big news. Rarely do we have such news that really encompasses the entire world and so historically significant. I loved it. I know all the people I commented with were talking about it. And even if you don't care about the monarchy, great theater, pomp and circumstance. So we're going to take a look back at the event and the issues surrounding it with our royal expert, Sheila Orr, in just a moment. But first, our old pal, Stew Young, deserves a mention. He's generating all kinds of activity over there in the West Shore.
That's what Stew Young does best. And of course, we all remember him after 30 years of mayoralty in Langford. He lost the last election last fall, and most of his council also went down to defeat after they ran the city, and they did so much to build it to 50,000 people and bring so many things into that community. But that's how things are in politics. Sometimes you overstay your welcome. But Stew still has lots to say, even from the sidelines. He told the Rumble Room last week there's no way that Langford's taxes should have gone up 12%, over 12% this year. He blames an inexperienced mayor and council, and he says they are anti-development, suggests developers could have really helped with this shortfall. Well, thousands of our viewers tuned in and heard this. We ran a clip of it, and there was pros and cons in the wake of Mayor Stew's comment.
Yeah, we sort of instigated quite the little battle online, I'm telling you. And when we say thousands, we're not kidding. Over 10,000 views, likely upwards of 100 comments. In the con category, so against, Stacy writes, how does Stew explain the lack of infrastructure like healthcare, police, fire, and ambulance services? Now we have more people as a result of crazy development, but no infrastructure, Stew.
And on the pro side of the ledger, Mark speaks or chimes in here. Stew Young was the best mayor in BC, and his record is amazing. He's setting the record straight. Too bad Langford now has a crew like this in City Hall that is not taking responsibility for its own irresponsibility.
Well, we'll have more from Stew next week, and likely more comments, because they're growing like a weed on our platforms. He'll be in to talk about the apartment that's just been emptied twice because of engineering errors. Oh my God, such a tragedy over there. He also promises to discuss drugs, policing, and any future plans he may have to run for office again. I'm excited to hear that. But now it's time to shift topics, not talkets, to the royal coronation, Robin.
The coronation, people are still buzzing about what they saw and experienced over several days. The coronation party that was going on in Great Britain, but celebrated worldwide. Billions watched this big event. And now we have Charles III and Queen Camilla. They were in Westminster Abbey, and certainly we took a close look at that, as did our special guest. We're going to talk to Sheila Orr in a minute, but let's tune in to get a bit of the flavor of what happened in that big event. So now back with us in the Victoria Rumble Room, a regular contributor, our regular correspondent on all things about the UK and the royal family. Sheila Orr, former MLA. So nice to have you back.
It's so good to be with you. I
And
love
Sheila,
it.
we have so much to talk about here.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so, what are your lasting impressions of this coronation that many of us stayed up very late to see, and many of us didn't get that much sleep, I think, because we got up so early in the morning to watch. What do you think about as you ponder back on it?
I got up, yes, at 1 o'clock. I watched BBC until 6:30 in the morning. I never fell asleep. I had a cup of tea, and I was right there with them. I just loved it. My lasting impressions were several actually, but the music was outstanding. Let's be honest. I mean, the choirs, the music, the pomp and pageantry was incredible. The whole thing was actually way better than I thought. But what I really loved was the parade, the military afterwards, all the soldiers and the RAF and the Navy and the Army. And, I laughed. I thought the 5,000 soldiers or military force people parading. And I thought of China and Russia when they have their big parades, and they have all these big tanks and everything. But Britain didn't. They just had people. And it was huge. It was, I think, the biggest they'd ever had. It was very, very good. It was very well organized. I know they had a few gaffes. I know that they did have the horse that backed into the crowds, but they got that under control. They had their protesters that they all jumped up and down about. There was all 250 of them, and there were 2 million in the crowd. So that isn't even a grain of sand on the beach.
Yes. Great summary, Sheila. I shared your experiences, although I watched it the next day, as my wife also did throughout the day. Certainly it was on TV, continues to be on TV. But let's get back to the coronation itself. And let's talk about the elephant in the room and the elephants that didn't show up. Prince Harry decided to come to the ceremony and sat back in the third row. I'm sure that's where he was placed, sitting behind Princess Anne's plumed military hat. He didn't look happy, Sheila. Do you think he took up too much airtime or took too much away from the coronation itself?
I think that his presence was so limited. There were a couple of things that I did hear because, my family's all in Britain and we were texting back and forth. One was this: his morning suit was made by a French designer and not a British one. And believe me, the Brits didn't like that. Now, that may be nothing to us, but it meant a lot to the British designers. So that sounds a bit, flippant, but it's true. I mean, they were not happy. Two, they did catch him on camera. A lip reader caught him on camera, and they deciphered what he said. He actually said to the husband, and I think it was Princess Eugenie, or I don't know which one it was, but he said to him, "They don't treat me very well anymore." Duh. I wonder why. So I thought that was really interesting. That came from my cousin. He said, "Oh my God, this just came over." So did he take up much space? I felt sad. I felt sad and sorry. He came into the cathedral. He spoke briefly to the Archbishop. Nobody paid much attention to him. He went to his seat. He sat back with his cousins, but his father was being crowned.
So, how sad were you about the other elephant, Sheila? And I'm talking about Meghan Markle, who chose.
You mean the second-rated star?
Well, she chose not to come. Originally, she said she wasn't coming because it happened to fall on her son Archie's birthday. And then we heard from some of her handlers that she didn't come because she didn't feel she'd be properly welcomed. And I suspect there was something to that. I know that there's a lot of people in the UK that aren't crazy about Meghan Markle right now. What do you think? Do you think she made the right call not to go?
I think I've told you before. I think she's, vying for the position of a Kardashian. So she didn't come because she would have been booed. Actually, I know that. The British public have no time for her anymore. But I found it interesting that the week before she didn't come, so she didn't get any press. But the week before, she launched herself as a, she launched herself. She did some sort of podcast. She changed her look. So this was all about look at me, look at me. As far as Archie's birthday, well, that's lovely. I mean, I think it's great. He's having his 4th birthday. Get real. This is royalty. They could have easily had their nannies get on a plane and get to England. They've traveled with babies before. Look at Princess Diana and those boys. She traveled with them. That was just an excuse. And the excuse to me was that she knew she would be booed, and she didn't want that.
Now, on the other hand, the Princess and Princess of Wales certainly came off well this weekend. For example, William coming up to his father to swear his loyalty, then kissing his father on the cheek was, frankly, a very poignant moment. The Windsor kids looked great. Mm-hmm. Everyone loves Princess Kate. I do. I mean, it's great watching those two enact. Would you agree that the future of the royals in UK looks pretty solid right now?
Oh, they are. I mean, I don't know what to say. They're so incredibly well trained, but it's not only that, they just have a presence. I don't know what it is. I mean, they're very good looking. We know that. They're tall, they're handsome. She's beautiful. The children are gorgeous. But there are many people like that in the world too. It's just, they just have the right attitude. She has the right attitude. I think she's had great training from her parents. I'm going to be honest with you. I think her parents were very smart, and they've kept the whole family on the straight and narrow. And he looked outstanding. But did you hear the lip reader again that saw Charles talking in the carriage outside of Westminster before he went in? Because they were actually late. They were supposed to be before him, not after. And if you notice, the car was sitting back. He apparently said, they're always late. Did you hear that? So I thought that was typical parent, right? For God's sakes, I'm getting crowned. Where are you?
On the other hand, as the royals are shining brightly in the UK, in Canada, it may be a bit of a different story. A recent poll came out just before the coronation that showed a 50-50 split in Canada about whether people favor the continuation of our constitutional monarchy overwhelmingly against a monarchy in Quebec. No big surprise there. How do you think Canadians really feel about King Charles III? And do you think that Canada playing its role, the Mounties led the parade, we had a delegation there, do you think that makes any difference in changing minds about keeping our constitutional monarchy?
I don't think so. Quebec rules this part of the conversation. They don't want the monarchy. Well, fair enough. You don't want the monarchy. Well, just move on. I mean, Quebec is Quebec is Quebec. We love them. We love their language. We love their food. We love them being part of Canada. But, they have a whole different opinion on so many different things. I don't think so. There will always be people say, why do we have them? Do we need them? We do. I've said this before. Do you want to be like the US? Do you want to be like America? No. We happen to like being individuals like this. We like being part of them. I do. But I think generally what I saw of this weekend, and I talked to a lot of folk, and they all loved it. They did. And mind you, we live in Victoria, which is a little bit British. And but I think overall it was thoroughly enjoyed, and I think we're going to keep the monarchy. The bottom line is, even for Britain, they're a huge tourist attraction. They are when they come here too. I mean, they're loved, they're respected. And I do think that the young royals are going to make a huge difference. But I still think, and I'll say this again, King Charles is an incredibly good businessman. He took the Duchy of Cornwall from $1 million operation to $1 billion operation. His own trust has huge. He's made it profoundly huge. He's done so much good, and he is a businessman. I mean, look what he's done to the monarchy. He's just shaved it down and cleaned it up and said, this is all we can afford. So I think under his stewardship, Britain will do well. In fact, I wished he was the prime minister. I think he'd do great in Parliament, but anyway, he's not allowed to. So
Sheila,
yeah, no.
let me just talk about some of the folks that perhaps don't share our opinions about what just happened. One surprise comment came from a Black British actress who has been starring in a Netflix Bridgerton series, who said, while there was a diversity at the ceremony, certainly, she was unhappy about all of the white faces on the balcony at Buckingham Palace. Are these feelings shared amongst UK citizens these days?
No, I mean, I don't know how she could say that. First of all, but let's go to an event, say in Nigeria, and the rulers of Nigeria are all getting together. Would you say where are the white folk? Of course not. It happens to be the royal family, and they happen to be white, and that's life. And the diversity in the cathedral was amazing. But it is a royal family. It is what it is. And actually, I think she did a lot of backhauling. I understand. My cousins were saying that she was really, apologizing, and it was just a dumb comment.
Mhm.
I think she's a good actress, and she's well liked, but I think that just did her in. I mean, that was just silly.
Absolutely. About 2 million people lined the parade route. There was a billion people, more than a billion people, billions of people watching the actual ceremony around the world. Weather didn't seem to affect people's enthusiasm on the big day. It was pouring rain. It was nicer on the Sunday. And lots of younger people in the crowd, all the things you like to see. Now, I understand, Sheila, you had a lot of family members that were both watching and participating in events and getting out into this whole coronation atmosphere. What did you hear from them?
Well, I have a very large family. I swear to God, I'm related to the immediate world. But they were all celebrating. If they weren't having tea or having street parties or getting together, one cousin sent a video of them in their complex where they had, tables, and they were playing lawn bowls, and my other cousins were all watching it. Everybody was doing something. They were either at the pub, they were in their gardens, they were in their houses, they were on the streets, or they were down in actually in central London. And I didn't know anybody that wasn't doing anything. Like, I mean, nobody. Everybody was doing something.
Even the concert.
Oh, the concert was unbelievable. My cousins just said it was unbelievable. I mean, the performances were great, but the way that they lit up the castle and all the sort of electronics that went with that, it was a great concert, packed to the gills. Well, I mean, let's be honest, the population of Britain is so huge. You get a $3 million crowd. People are 2 million. That's nothing considering the population is 78 million.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they also celebrated in all the cities. Did you probably noticed that every major city was celebrating. They had concerts themselves, and they had their buildings lit up, and it was a real celebration.
So
it's what Britain needed.
Let's take it from there. Do a bit of future gazing here. So we've got this extraordinary event. We see King Charles and now Queen Camilla all in the get up and the crowns, all of the Windsor family, royals waving from the balcony. What a beautiful scene to remember for forever. However, Charles has waited a long time to be king. Do you think he's going to have a long reign, or maybe do we see a similar ceremony maybe a decade from now?
Well, his family certainly have longevity. He's 75. I just got to say something quickly. That crown weighed 50 pounds. Imagine putting 50 pounds of potatoes on your head. So
did it
I just
really?
have to say that because I just don't think people realize how heavy it was. Yeah,
that was the
pounds.
Ceremonial crown. He only wore the ceremonial crown.
The ceremonial crown
in the church. He had another crown that he wore the rest of the time.
The real crown, what I call the real crown, 50 pounds. No, I think he's going to be around for a while. I'm going to give him at least 10 years, maybe 15, which will make him, as old as his mother was when she passed away. And I think that also gives William, he'll be mature, but he'll still be younger. And I think that he's not going to leave that soon. No, I think he's going to be a good king. We don't warm up to him because he's not warm and fuzzy, but he's just solid, and he's clever, and he will be a good steward.
Reason!
local show, but we really love to focus on big world events, especially when there's such significant links, historical links to Canada. And speaking of another major Canadian event, a major cultural Canadian event, thousands turned out in Orillia, Ontario, to say goodbye to a national treasure, Gordon Lightfoot, who has now died at the age of 84.
Gordon Lightfoot, one of the all-time greats both in Canada and worldwide. You know, I had a chance to see him perform at the Victoria Conference Centre a couple of decades ago. His voice wasn't great, pretty scratchy, just didn't sound like Gordon Lightfoot, and he was very, very, very thin. But boy, could he still command a room, and I'm so glad I had a chance to see him. His songs will live on generation to generation, and on that note, it's almost time to say goodbye.
Yeah, listen, Robin, I just want to also, how much I love Gordon Lightfoot's music and sort of represented historical points in Canadian history and Canadian growth of our country. The greats like Lightfoot and Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, they're getting old. Of course, you and I aren't getting old, but and slowly passing. But good music lasts forever, Robin, and we'll always be humming their music. So yes, you're right. Indeed, time to wrap up another Rumble Room. And I want to thank you for being one of the almost now 950,000 viewers who've tuned into our show since we started this project 2 years ago. Who could have thought, Robin? Who could have thought? Now, here's how you can follow us. You know, I go through this at the end of every show, but I'm quite sure there's somebody who's still not sure how to connect to our, well, what I think is entertainment interviewing. Facebook, there is Twitter, there is YouTube, there is also Facebook groups, there is Instagram, and we're also on TikTok. So I remain your humble servant, who also happens to be, as identified at the beginning of every show, the Coronation sensation, John Jurisic.
And as always, I'm very humbled to be in your presence, Johnny, and grateful for all the viewership. And on that happy note, I'm Robin Adair, and rumble on!